I'm Joe Glasco. The other half of our practice is my wife, J.R. Doty, and we've been working together collaboratively for about 8 years now, since we met in grad school for photography at San Francisco Art Institute. And so we've done numerous solo shows together, and this was kind of like a culmination of a road trip we took in about 2014, where we traveled about 40,000 miles across the country and taking pictures and shot 50,000 images of the American West and all the way to Florida and back again. And so this project kind of became a representation of that exploration and just the interest in the American landscape. So we were able to procure the entire collection of Arizona highways starting about 1938, I think, up to 2000. So about 1,500 individual magazines that we have. A lot of them have duplicates in there. And so when we got that archive of magazines, we started going through and looking for typologies. So photographs taken of the same location, just at different times or by different photographers, and just exploring that notion of how the landscape alters or how it's perceived differently by different photographers, and then also kind of bringing it back into the context of social media and hashtags and everything like that, where you're seeing these same photographs taken over and over again. And then just kind of the iconic American West propaganda that was part of Arizona Highways. It was basically a state-sponsored magazine to move out there and kind of explores all of the canal projects out there and different dams they were building, Lake Powell and Glen Canyon. And so it's just kind of this resource for people to see the progression and the works projects that were going on in that region at that time. And then lots of contributions from different photographers, including Ansel Adams, would produce projects for the magazine. We really wanted to take these landscape photographs and kind of re-represent them as almost painting-like or in an ephemeral way. And so we're just trying to explore and present the photographs in a new fashion that's not typically like traditional photography. The main medium in this whole show here is silk. We print on 2 different kinds of silk, the doorway being the thinnest silk that you can buy. And I think it's just an interesting material to be working with because it's not your traditional photography. You know, it's not on paper or framed or anything like that. So it's kind of a way to bring this ephemeral nature to these landscapes and the subtleties of color back around full circle, and then to be able to like interact with the image too by having it draped slightly and it moves when you walk by it. So there's another layer of interaction with the viewer. The original idea for making this piece as a whole was to create kind of a room where you were looking out into these landscapes. So that's why everything else is white and kind of cut off from the artwork itself. And so the doorway is looking out and you have the windows on the sides, and this would be like a representation of a paned window almost in a way, and looking out into these different landscapes. And so it kind of, I wanted to bring like the American dream kind of home aesthetic back to like these images and everything like that, and kind of how, you know, the West kind of shaped America after World War II, and just that kind of that aspect of almost manifest destiny and exploring notions around that. I grew up in Santa Fe, New Mexico, so I've always had a fascination with the West, and both my parents are artists, and so was my great uncle, and he was friends with Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera and Georgia O'Keeffe, so just kind of artist working in the Southwest, and just the landscape itself, and just my fascination and my wife's grew deeper and deeper as we like started traveling more and living out of a trailer. And you know, it's just like there's so many beautiful places in this country and so many magnificent like land formations. So it's just become an obsession now at this point with us. I think Oklahoma belongs to, it's like border of the Southwest, but when you get, I feel like there's kind of a little denotation between the start of the plains and, you know, when you hit New Mexico and you kind of start hitting the Rockies. Like, I really see the Rockies as being a border for the West in a sense, because it was just such a massive land formation that you had to get over to like get to all of these other places like that. The landscape is so poetic and magical in a way, and so almost foreign to a lot of people and what they would be used to. So I think there is kind of a mythical notion of going beyond, like going out of your comfort zone in a way, and like exploring all of these foreign lands and kind of, and then this where we're showing multiples of each place and kind of deconstructing that place over a period of time, I think kind of speaks to that or plays with those notions. And then also when we did the double exposures here on these pieces of like two landscapes coming together, and just kind of one fading away and one coming towards you, and then back and forth in that play, and then having the mirror behind it as well, creating another dimension that goes kind of into the wall itself. The physical properties of the silk really lend itself to that, and just the transparent quality in the image. And then also we're using all of these reflections and repetitions of images, and kind of everything repeats itself. The doorway has the same image on both sides, and you're able to look through it and almost see it as a landscape in a three-dimensional form. And then the light passes through that and then reflects in the mirror, and then you're able to see these images again in that mirror as you look through the door. So I think, you know, it all kind of comes together in the middle. What's so unique about the Arizona Highways magazine itself is the way that it was printed. So it was this lithographic printing process, and with really, really rich colors that were almost oversaturated, and they really spoke to that kind of nostalgic quality of the representation of what it was depicting, basically. And so I think that's another thing that really drew us to these images and to the ones we chose, was just kind of this almost otherworldly color that was coming out in the magazine itself. And then the printing process has changed like every decade or so, so you'll get different results as you progress through the archive as well. You can kind of, sometimes you can see it and sometimes you can't, but you know, like this one has different saturation than this one, and so we're kind of playing with that. And then the image also would kind of degrade in the printing process. It would not be as sharp or refined, and I think that part of it also lends itself to the nostalgic quality that you see here. The landscape in the West is just so dramatic and drawn out that you really have to like look down onto it rather opposed to creating a center horizon line in the whole thing. And so most of these perspectives where the image was taken, you're really trying to capture as much of that landscape coming to you rather than cutting it off in the middle. And it does kind of lend itself to like the early Hudson Valley painters, and like the great expanse, like is really what you're going for and trying to capture all of that. So it's not about is a little less about the dramatic sunrise or sunset or that aspect of it. You really want to be focused on the foreground in the image and trying to capture as much information and trying to get a sense of space. So a lot of people like say I'm like, oh, I'm interested in this thing back here, but you really need to like build a foreground into the image to kind of create that sense of space in there. And so once you photographed a lot of landscapes and you kind of start to realize like where your focal point needs to be, and it's not at the horizon, but it's maybe about a third of the way into the image is really where you want that crisp, because it's kind of like the way you see the landscape too. It's kind of trying to take that perspective. I think the one that I'm most attracted to that has a dialogue with our work is the Via Selman's piece, Next Door. I'm a huge fan of her work, and it's just, it has an ephemeral quality to it as well, and it's something that you can kind of get lost in. And then I really like the connection from that piece to the Leo Villarreal piece, and the ceiling panels and kind of the starry night combination that's going on in that conversation between those two pieces. I think it was really important, like I wanted the viewer to see someone interacting in the landscape. So, you know, like the Grand Canyon, we have the guy sitting on the cliff, and then these people in the petrified forest, and the waterfall as well. And then over here there's a guy on a horseback right here, and then another cowboy on the other side sitting in there. So it's just kind of, you have to see, I think it all comes back around full circle to, like, this magazine was produced to draw people out to the West, and I think they had to depict people in these landscapes so that it seemed like a physical, like it was possible to go there. We went through probably all the magazines to get to these images here, and you know, and the ones on the windows on the sides. So that's on the back cover is 2 full bleed images, one on each side of the paper. So if you were to scan that as a negative, like almost with light passing through it, that's how we got to this double exposure. So, and same with the door as well. So that really took a lot of time to find just 2 images that worked perfectly together, you know. As the typologies are repetition of the same images, same with the mirror here is wanting to repeat that, and then it repeats everything else again. So it's just like and then it also becomes almost another portal out of the room in a way. As the mirrors work on the wall, this does the same. Not quite the same because it's resting on a pedestal, so it's not quite as seamless, but still kind of trying to let all the works speak to each other.